The battle is won, Israel, lift your heads high. In the power of Yahweh we never say die. Through the fire and the storm we've walked the line. With a Messiah Yeshua our victory's divine. From the chains of oppression to the land of the free. In the light of his truth our eyes now see. Israel, we conquered with his word as our sword. In the strength of Yahweh we've never ignored. Through the trials and the pain he withstood our ground. In the promises of old our faith is found. The battle is won, in his name we proclaim. With the might of his spirit we rise without shame. From the east to the west his glory we sing. In the heart of his people his praises ring. With every breath we take his power we trust. In the covenant of Yahweh we turn from the dust. The battle is won, feel the beat of the drum. From the rhythm of hope here the victory comes. Stand tall, Israel, let your voices unite. In the midst of the dark we'll break through the night. The battle is won, hear the anthem arise. From the ashes of pain we ascend to the skies. In the justice of love on this path that we tread. With Yahweh beside us, no fear in our head. The battle is won, Israel stand in his light. In the love of Yahweh we shine so bright. With the Messiah Yahushua we've broken the chains. In the blood of his sacrifice victory reigns. Tears may have fallen but now we stand strong. With the rhythms of freedom we dance to his song. In the streets and the hearts let our praises go forth. Spreading joy through the struggles, the pain and the worth. Every struggle a story, every wound a scar. Yet together we rise like a shining new star. Every moment we breathe is a gift from above. In the unity of Israel we wrap it in love. The last one, feel the beat of the drum. From the rhythm of hope here the victory comes. Stand tall, Israel, let your voices unite. In the midst of the dark we'll break through the night. The battle is won, hear the anthem arise. From the ashes of pain we ascend to the skies. In the justice of love on this path that we tread. With Yahweh beside us, no fear in our head. Lift your heads, Israel, this is our time. With the rhythm of freedom we'll forever climb. In the battle we fought, our spirits stay strong. Together we walk in the victory song. Oh.
The battle is won. All praises to the Most High. And let me begin by saying shalom, shalom, shalom. You are live and direct once again with your Akazaki Yahoo. And as always, I'm giving all praises, honor, and great esteem to the Most High Power, Yahweh, Bashem, Hamashiach, Wamalak, Yahweh Shai, and to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say shalom, wa, Baruch, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day when the Most High brings us back together. We are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High power and under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us, all those who oppose us, all those who abuse us, under our feet. All praises to the Almighty Yah. Hallelujah.
So be it. Hallelujah.
Yes, indeed. I'm joined this evening by my most esteemed Akenaniah. Shalom, Aki.
Shalom, Aki. Happy day. No, Slakia, not happy day of atonement, but happy new moon. Shalom, Israel. Happy new moon. Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shabarakatham.
Yes, indeed. All praises to the Most High. Happy new moon. Most High, Yahweh, in the name of his beloved Son, Yahweh Shah the Messiah, bless you. All praises. Yes, indeed, there's another new moon opportunity. We praise the Abba for another month and another chance to get this thing right. Beginning of a new month. And we are back with another video review as well on this new moon celebration. And we got a good one for you. We talked about the Deacons before, but we found I found this video that has gone way in depth. So we're gonna get to it and get through it and give the praises, honor, and the esteem to the Most High as we learn and grow. This is Louisiana Deacons fight versus KKK. And this is brought to us by Dark History. All right. As always, link is in the description box. So feel free to visit them. But here we go.
The 21st of February 1965, Bogalusa, Louisiana. 10 o'clock at night. Charles Sims stood on the roof of a small house on Union Avenue, Winchester rifle in his hands, Bible in his jacket pocket. Below him, 12 black men, all veterans of World War II and Korea, stood in defensive positions with shotguns loaded. In the distance, the sound of engines, 40 vehicles, over 100 men. The Ku Klux Klan was coming to burn down another black church, and this time they planned to kill everyone inside. Charles had been beaten by the Klan 3 times before. His daughter had nightmares every night, afraid the white men with torches would come for her. His neighbors had watched their churches burn, their homes shot up, their brothers lynched. For 100 years, black people in Louisiana had run from the Klan. Tonight was different. Tonight they had guns. Tonight, they would fight back. And tonight, for the first time in Southern history, the Klan would lose. The convoy of Klan vehicles rolled into the black neighborhood. They started firing into homes where families were sleeping, children screaming, women praying. And then the Deacons for Defense and Justice opened fire. Shotgun blasts, rifle cracks, precise, disciplined, deadly. The Klan had never faced armed black resistance before. They panicked. They fled, tires screeching, men shouting. Within 3 minutes, every Klan vehicle was speeding away into the darkness. Not a single black person was injured that night. And the night riding, the terrorizing, the shooting into black homes in Bogalusa, Louisiana, ended that night. Forever. You never learned this story. It was erased, deleted from every textbook, banned from every classroom. Why? Because they do not want you to know that your grandfathers had guns. They do not want you to know that your ancestors fought the Klan and won. They do not want you to know that armed black resistance worked. They want you to believe that nonviolence was the only way. They want you to believe that black people needed white permission to be free. They lied. This is the story of the Deacons for Defense and Justice. 200 black Christian men, veterans, fathers, church deacons, who organized across 4 states with military precision, who stopped over 100 Klan attacks, who protected civil rights workers that the federal government refused to protect, who made the FBI terrified, who forced governors to surrender, who proved that the Second Amendment belongs to black people too, and who were systematically erased from history because their success destroyed the narrative of black helplessness. Your ancestors were not victims, they were warriors, and what they did in the 1960 seconds explains everything about why you struggle today. Because after the Deacons won, the system changed its tactics. If they could not terrorize you with the Klan, they would terrorize you with mass incarceration. If they could not steal your land with lynching, they would steal it with gentrification. If they could not disarm you with violence, they would disarm you with felony convictions. The war never ended. It just changed uniforms. This video will change how you see everything. Your history, your identity, your power, your responsibility. And by the end, you will understand why they are so desperate to take your guns today. Because armed black communities are the one thing the system has always feared most. Let me show you what they erased. By the end of this video, you will know 3 truths that will shatter everything you were taught. First, you will learn the names, faces, and stories of the men who defeated the Ku Klux Klan with Bibles and rifles. Ernest Thomas, Charles Sims, Frederick Douglass Kirkpatrick, Robert Hicks, Ah Tset Young. Men who prayed before every operation. Men who never fired first but always fired back. Men who saved hundreds of lives. You will know their names because history tried to erase them. Second, you will see the documented proof that this was not one isolated incident. 21 chapters across Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Arkansas. 46 affiliate groups. Hundreds of men. Thousands of successful defensive actions. A coordinated, disciplined, armed resistance movement that worked. The evidence is overwhelming. The FBI has 1,500 pages of files on the Deacons. Survivor testimonies exist. Photographs exist. But your schools never showed you any of it. Third, you will understand the direct line from the Deacons' success in 1965 to your struggles today in 2025. The mass incarceration explosion, the wealth gap, the police militarization, the push for gun control in black communities, it all connects. They did not stop oppressing you. They just changed methods. And once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. This is not ancient history. This is your parents' lifetime. Many of the Deacons are still alive today. Their children are your age. Their grandchildren are watching this video right now. If your family came from Louisiana, Mississippi, or Alabama, someone in your bloodline knew about the Deacons. Someone in your family might have been a deacon. This is your history. This is your stolen inheritance. And today, you take it back. After this video, you will never accept the lie that nonviolence was the only path to freedom. You will never believe that armed self-defense is somehow un-Christian. You will never think that the civil rights movement succeeded because white people finally developed a conscience. You will know the truth. Freedom was won because black men with guns made terrorism too expensive. And that truth is so dangerous to the system that they spent 60 years burying it. But you found this video. That is not an accident. That is providence. You were meant to know this. Your ancestors fought so you could be free. Now it is time to learn how they did it, and what you must do to finish what they started. Are you ready? Because there is no going back after this. Once you know the truth, you have a responsibility to it. Let me take you back to 1964, to a small town in Louisiana where everything changed, to the moment when black men decided they would rather die standing than live kneeling, to the birth of the most successful armed black resistance movement in modern American history. Here is what they never wanted you to know. November 1964, Jonesboro, Louisiana, Jackson Parish. Population 3,000, 70% black, 1 paper mill, 1 white high school, 1 black high school, and 5 black churches that had just been burned to the ground by the Ku Klux Klan. Ernest Thomas stood in the ashes of Mount Pilgrim Baptist Church. This was where he was baptized, where he married his wife, where his children sang in the choir. Now it was charcoal and rubble. The Klan had come at 2 in the morning, gasoline, torches, laughter. The white sheriff showed up 3 hours later, wrote down nothing, arrested no one. He told Ernest that the investigation was closed. Accidental fire. Ernest asked him how 5 churches accidentally burned on the same night. The sheriff told him to go home before he got arrested for disturbing the peace. Ernest Thomas was born in the 1922nd in Jonesboro. His parents were sharecroppers who owned nothing. He worked the fields as a child, but in 1943, he was drafted into World War II. He fought Nazis in Europe. He saw the concentration camps. He helped liberate France. And when he came home in 1946, wearing his uniform with his medals, a white man in downtown Jonesboro told him to get off the sidewalk, step into the street, because sidewalks were for white people. He had just fought fascism in Europe, and he came home to fascism in Louisiana. But Europe taught Ernest something the white men of Jonesboro did not want him to know. It taught him that when organized men with weapons resist tyranny, tyranny loses. He spent the next 18 years working at the paper mill, raising his family, going to church, keeping his head down. But he never forgot what he learned in the war. And in November 1964, standing in the ashes of his church, he decided it was time to apply those lessons. Ernest called 15 men to his garage, all of them veterans, all of them fathers, all of them Christians. He said this: The Klan burned our churches. The police will not help us. The FBI will not come. The federal government does not care. If we do nothing, they will kill us one by one, until there are none of us left, or we can defend ourselves. We have guns. We know how to use them. We fought for America. Now we fight for our families. One of the men asked if that meant becoming like the Klan, becoming violent, becoming terrorists. Ernest said no. We will never attack anyone. We will never fire first, but we will defend. When they come to burn, we will stop them. When they come to kill, we will protect. We will use force only when force is used against us. But when that moment comes, we will not run. We will stand, and we will shoot back. They voted. Unanimous. And on that night in November 1964, the Deacons for Defense and Justice were born. They chose the name deliberately. Deacons, because they were churchmen. Defense, because they would only act defensively. Justice, because that is what they sought. Not revenge, not dominance. Justice. The right to live without terror, the right to worship without fear, the right to raise children without wondering if tonight would be the night the Klan came. That is not a radical demand. That is the most basic human right, and they were willing to die for it. Ernest became the unofficial leader. They organized like a military unit because most of them had military training. President, vice president, lieutenants, squads. They established rules. No hotheads, no drunks, no criminals. Members had to be over 21, had to be married, had to be registered to vote, had to be vouched for by 2 current members. This was not a gang. This was not a militia looking for a fight. This was a disciplined, defensive organization. And the discipline was the key to everything. They collected weapons, shotguns mostly, rifles, a few pistols, all legal under Louisiana law. They conducted drills in the woods outside town, fire discipline, ambush positions, crossfire lanes, defensive perimeters. They were not playing. They were preparing for war. And in January 1965, that war came. The Congress of Racial Equality, CORE, sent organizers to Jonesboro to register black voters. The Klan issued a warning. Any black person who tried to register would be beaten. Any white person helping them would be killed. On the 8th of January 1965, 150 black high school students marched to the courthouse to demand integrated schools. The white sheriff called the fire department. They rolled out fire hoses. In January, in Louisiana, they were going to blast children with freezing water for asking to go to school. And then 4 cars pulled up. Ernest Thomas and 11 other deacons stepped out. They walked to the front of the crowd. In full view of the sheriff, the fire department, and the 100 white men who had gathered to watch, the deacons loaded their shotguns. Slowly, deliberately. Pump. Click. Shells in the chamber. They did not point the guns at anyone. They just stood there, armed. Waiting. The sheriff stared at them. The deacons stared back. 60 seconds of silence. The sheriff told the fire department to leave. The white crowd dispersed. The students marched to the courthouse and registered. Not one student was touched. That was the first victory. And the news spread across Louisiana like lightning. Black men in Jonesboro have guns. Black men in Jonesboro are fighting back. Black men in Jonesboro won. Within 2 weeks, the New York Times published an article about the Deacons. Within a month, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover sent a memo to every FBI office in the South. Investigate the Deacons for Defense and Justice immediately. Potential for violence. Possible communist influence. Threat to public order. The irony was obvious. The Klan had been burning churches and lynching people for 100 years. No urgent FBI investigation. But black men defending themselves? Immediate intensive investigation. That tells you everything about whose side the federal government was on. But the investigation could not stop what was happening, because the Deacons were expanding. And 60 miles south of Jonesboro, in the town they called the Klan capital of Louisiana, a man named Charles Sims was about to turn the Deacons into a legend. the 21st of February 1965, the same night Malcolm X was assassinated in New York. That fact is not a coincidence. The system was terrified of armed black leadership. On that same night, in Bogalusa, Louisiana, the Deacons for Defense and Justice officially launched their largest chapter, and the man they chose to lead it would become the most famous, most feared, and most effective leader in the organization's history. Charles Sims was a Korean War veteran. He worked at the Crown Zellerbach paper mill, the largest employer in Bogalusa. He had been beaten by the Klan twice. Once in 1961, they jumped him outside a bar, broke his ribs, left him in the street. Once in 1963, they stopped his car, dragged him out, whipped him with chains. Both times the police watched. Both times no one was arrested. Charles Sims was scarred, angry, and absolutely done with fear. Bogalusa was different from Jonesboro. Jonesboro was small. Bogalusa was a city, 22,000 people, and the Klan did not operate in the shadows there. They were the city. The police chief was Klan. The mayor was Klan. Half the city council was Klan. Over 1,500 active Klan members in a city of 22,000. The Klan held public rallies. They marched in parades. They handed out flyers at grocery stores. And every few nights they conducted night rides. Convoys of trucks and cars driving through black neighborhoods at high speed, firing guns into homes. Sometimes they threw firebombs. Sometimes they just shot out windows. The goal was terror. Constant, random, unpredictable terror. And it worked. Black people in Bogalusa lived in permanent fear. When Ernest Thomas and Frederick Douglass Kirkpatrick came to Bogalusa in February to establish a Deacons chapter, Charles Sims gathered 60 men in the basement of a church. Thomas explained the mission. Kirkpatrick explained the rules. And then Sims spoke. He said this: "I fought for this country in Korea. I killed communists for America. And I come home to America, and the Klan treats me like I am the enemy. My daughter cannot sleep at night because she hears gunshots. My wife is afraid to go to the grocery store. I am tired of being afraid. I am tired of running. I am tired of praying that tonight they will not come for me. Starting tonight, we stop running. Starting tonight, if they come, we meet them with bullets." They voted Charles Sims president of the Bogalusa chapter. Within 1 week, he had recruited 80 members. Within 1 month, 120. The Bogalusa Deacons became the largest, most organized, and most militant chapter in the entire organization. And the Klan knew it. And the Klan was terrified. But there was something most people do not understand about the Deacons. They were not just a defensive force. They were a strategic operation. They worked hand in hand with the non-violent civil rights organizations. CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, and the NAACP sent workers to Bogalusa to organize voter registration and desegregation campaigns. Those workers were mostly young, idealistic, committed to non-violence, and they were completely unprotected. The federal government refused to send marshals. The local police were Klan. The workers were sitting ducks. Enter the Deacons. Every CORE office had 4 Deacons on guard at all times, armed, rotating shifts, 24 hours a day. Every march, every protest, every voter registration drive had Deacons on the perimeter, sometimes visible, sometimes not. When CORE workers drove to rural areas to register voters, Deacons followed in cars behind them. If the Klan tried to intercept, they would have to go through the Deacons first. And the Klan knew that meant a gunfight, so they did not intercept. A.Z. Young, president of the Bogalusa NAACP, said this: "We believed in nonviolence, but we also believed in not dying. The Deacons made nonviolence possible. Without them, we would have all been killed." Think about that. The entire narrative you were taught about the civil rights movement is that nonviolence won, that Martin Luther King's message of love conquered hate, that peaceful protests shamed white America into granting rights. That is a lie, not a complete lie. King's message mattered, Non-violent tactics mattered, but non-violence only worked because armed black men made terrorism too dangerous. The Deacons were the hidden shield, the invisible bodyguards, the reason the movement survived, and the system hated them for it. Because if people knew that armed resistance was necessary for freedom, then the entire narrative collapses. They want you to believe you need to beg for rights. Ask nicely. Wait patiently. Accept incremental progress. The Deacons proved that you need to defend your rights, that freedom is not given, that justice requires force when faced with violence. That is a truth so dangerous they spent 60 years erasing it from history. In the summer of 1965, James Farmer came to Bogalusa. Farmer was the national director of CORE. He was one of the most prominent civil rights leaders in America, and the Klan publicly announced that Farmer would not leave Bogalusa alive. They meant it. They had killed before. They would kill again. Farmer knew he was walking into a death trap, but he came anyway. Because the fight in Bogalusa mattered. If the Klan could hold Bogalusa, they could hold the South. Charles Sims personally took command of Farmer's security. He assigned a 12-man team, 2 cars in front of Farmer's vehicle, 2 cars behind, all armed with shotguns and rifles. Everywhere Farmer went, the Deacons went. When Farmer spoke at churches, Deacons positioned on rooftops with rifles. When Farmer walked through neighborhoods, Deacons walked parallel on adjacent streets. When Farmer slept, Deacons guarded every entrance to the house, 24 hours a day. For 6 weeks. One night, the Klan came. Over 40 Klansmen surrounded the house where Farmer was staying. They had guns, they had gasoline. They were going to burn him alive. But the Deacons were already in position. 20 men, tactical placements, high ground, crossfire lanes. Charles Sims called out from the roof, "You can try to come in, but you will die. Every one of you will die. We will not fire first. But if you fire, we will kill you." 3 hours of standoff. The Klan trying to decide if they were willing to die. The Deacons willing to die if necessary. Finally, the Klan left. They never tried again. James Farmer survived. He went on to lead more campaigns, register more voters, integrate more schools. And he testified later that the Deacons for Defense and Justice saved his life. Without them, he said, I would not have survived Bogalusa. The non-violent movement succeeded because armed black men protected it. But here is what is so important to understand. The Deacons did not just defend individuals. They changed the entire power dynamic. Before the Deacons, the Klan had total freedom. They could terrorize anyone, anytime, anywhere. No consequences. After the Deacons, every Klan action carried risk. The risk that this time, the black people would shoot back. The risk that this time, Klansmen would die. And that risk changed everything. Terrorism only works when the terrorist faces no danger. The Deacons introduced danger, and terrorism stopped. In Bogalusa, night riding ended in the summer of 1965. Completely. For the first time in 40 years, black families could sleep without fear of gunfire. Church bombings stopped. Home invasions stopped. Not because the Klan developed a conscience, because the Klan developed fear. One of the Deacons, a man named Robert Hicks, said this: "We did not make white people love us. We made white people afraid to kill us. That is not the victory they teach in schools, but it is the victory that kept us alive." Frederick Douglass Kirkpatrick, the co-founder alongside Ernest Thomas, was the strategist behind the expansion. He understood that the Deacons could not remain isolated. If they only operated in Jonesboro and Bogalusa, the Klan would concentrate forces and overwhelm them. They needed to spread, fast. Create chapters across the South, force the Klan to defend everywhere, attack nowhere. Kirkpatrick traveled constantly. Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, recruiting, training, organizing. By the end of 1965, the Deacons had 21 official chapters and 46 affiliate groups. Hundreds of armed members, thousands of supporters. They were in Natchez, Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, Macomb, Mississippi, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, small towns across the South that you have never heard of, but where black people lived in terror until the Deacons arrived. Every chapter followed the same model: strict membership requirements, military discipline, defensive posture only, cooperation with non-violent groups, legal weapons, and absolute refusal to be terrorized. The formula worked. Everywhere the Deacons organized, clan violence decreased. In some places, it stopped entirely. This was not a theory. This was documented, verified reality. The FBI has the files, historians have the records, survivors have the testimonies. Armed black self-defense worked. But the story the system tells today pretends the Deacons never existed. Why? Because their success destroys three lies the system depends on. Lie number one: black people were helpless victims, rescued by white saviors. Lie number two: non-violence alone won civil rights. Lie number three: guns in black hands are dangerous. The Deacons proved all three lies false. Black people rescued themselves. Non-violence worked because violence backed it up, and guns in black hands protected black lives. That truth is so dangerous they erased it. But you are hearing it now, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. Your ancestors were not helpless. They were armed. They were organized. They were victorious. That is your inheritance. That is your history. That is your legacy. And that is why they tried so hard to hide it from you. Hold that thought. Because what I am about to show you next will prove this was not isolated to Louisiana. The pattern of armed black resistance, followed by systematic erasure, happened everywhere. Multiple times, different decades, same story. And when you see the pattern, you will understand that this is not about history. This is about control. They erase your resistance so you forget that resistance works. But it does work. Let me prove it. The Deacons were not the first. And they were not the only. What happened in Louisiana in the 1960 seconds was part of a much larger pattern. A pattern of successful armed black resistance that has been systematically deleted from American history. Because every time black people defended themselves with weapons and won, the system erased the story. Let me show you the pattern. And once you see it, you will never look at history the same way again. 1959. Monroe, North Carolina. Robert F. Williams, president of the local NAACP chapter. The Klan tried to burn down his house. Williams and the black men in his neighborhood fired back. The Klan fled. No one was hurt. Victory. The FBI investigated Williams, not the Klan. Williams was forced into exile. His story was erased from textbooks. Why? Same reason as the Deacons. They cannot let you know that armed defense works. 1960. Detroit, Michigan. During the riots, black homeowners armed themselves to defend their properties. They formed neighborhood watch groups with rifles. Entire blocks were untouched by rioters and police violence alike. Armed defense worked. That part of the story never made the news. The news only showed destruction, not defense. Why? Because defense requires guns, and they do not want you armed. 1961. Cleveland, Ohio. The Glenville Shootout. Black nationalists led by Fred Ahmed Evans fired on police who were raiding their community. 3 police officers killed. Evans was arrested and imprisoned. But the neighborhood organized, armed. For months after, police did not enter that neighborhood without negotiation. Armed presence created leverage. That story is told as terrorism. But if you ask the people who lived there, they will tell you it was defense. And it worked until the leaders were arrested and disarmed. 1970 seconds, Chicago, Illinois. The Black Panther Party conducted armed patrols. They openly carried weapons while monitoring police. Police brutality in those neighborhoods dropped measurably. The Panthers provided armed security for community events, schools, health clinics. It worked. The FBI destroyed the Panthers with COINTELPRO, not because the Panthers were violent. The Panthers were less violent than the police. The FBI destroyed them because armed, organized black communities terrified the system. The same system that tolerates white militias could not tolerate black self-defense. Do you see the pattern yet? Every single time black Americans organized armed defense, it worked. Clan violence decreased, police brutality decreased, community safety increased, and every single time, the federal government intervened, not to stop the terrorists, to stop the black defenders. The FBI investigated. The media smeared. The leaders were arrested, exiled, or killed, and the history was erased. But let me take you deeper into the pattern, because it is not just about the 20th century. This pattern goes back to Reconstruction, 1868 to 1876. Immediately after the Civil War, black men in the South were armed. They had served in the Union Army. They kept their weapons. They formed militias. And for 8 years, black political power flourished. Black men voted. Black men held office. Black men owned land. Black men built wealth. Why? Because they had guns. And when the Klan tried to terrorize them, they fought back. Hundreds of documented cases of black militias defending against Klan attacks during Reconstruction. Most won. Most are forgotten. Then 1876. The federal government withdrew troops from the South. The Compromise of 1877. Black people were left defenseless. The Klan, no longer facing resistance, launched a reign of terror. Lynchings, massacres, stolen elections, and the first thing they did everywhere was disarm black people. New laws prohibiting black gun ownership, confiscation, and then the massacres began. Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898. Rosewood, Florida, 1923. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. Elaine, Arkansas, 1919. Every single one of these massacres followed the same pattern. First, disarm black people, then attack. If black communities had been armed like they were during Reconstruction, those massacres would have been battles, and the white mobs would have lost. The system learned the lesson. Armed black people are dangerous to white supremacy. So the system developed a two-part strategy. Part 1, disarm. Part 2, erase the memory that black people were ever armed and victorious. If you do not know your ancestors fought and won, you will not think to fight yourself. The Deacons operated during a narrow window, 1964 to 1968. During that window, gun ownership was still legal in the South. The Deacons exploited that. They organized openly, legally, and they won. But the window was closing. In 1968, after the assassinations of King and Robert Kennedy, Congress passed the Gun Control Act. The act was ostensibly about crime, but it was enforced disproportionately in black communities. The message was clear. No more Deacons, no more armed black resistance. You will accept police protection or you will have no protection. And then the second part of the strategy, erasure. The Deacons disappeared from history, not by accident, by design. Look at civil rights textbooks published in the 1970 seconds. The Deacons are not mentioned. 1980 seconds. Not mentioned. 1990 secondo. Not mentioned. 2002. Barely mentioned in academic texts, never in high school textbooks. It was not until the 2000s that a few historians started writing about them. But even now, most Americans have never heard of the Deacons for Defense and Justice. Why? Because the truth they represent is too dangerous. Armed black communities defeat terrorism. That is a truth the system cannot allow to spread. But here is where it gets even darker. Because the pattern did not stop with erasure. The system learned it could not just delete history. It had to replace it. So they replaced the story of armed black resistance with the story of non-violent sainthood. Martin Luther King became the only acceptable black leader. And even King was sanitized. The real King was radical. He opposed capitalism. He opposed the Vietnam War. He demanded reparations. But the version they teach in schools is the safe king. The I have a dream king. The turn the other cheek king. The king who makes white people comfortable. They erased the revolutionary king and replaced him with a mascot. And they erased the deacons entirely. Because the deacons had guns. And guns make the system uncomfortable. Let me give you the numbers. Because this is not speculation. This is documented fact. From 1,882 to 1,968, there were 4,743 recorded lynchings of black people in America. Most historians agree the real number is much higher because many were not recorded. But here is the key fact. The vast majority of lynchings happened in areas where black people were disarmed. During Reconstruction, when black people were armed, lynching rates were lower. After Reconstruction, when black people were systematically disarmed, lynching rates exploded. In the 1,960 seconds, in towns where the Deacons operated, Klan violence dropped to nearly zero. In towns where the Deacons did not operate, the violence continued. The correlation is undeniable. Armed black communities are safer. Disarmed black communities are vulnerable. This is not ideology. This is data. But the data has been buried, because if people understood the data, they would demand the right to defend themselves. And the system does not want that. Now let me tell you about the one time the federal government actually intervened to protect civil rights in Bogalusa, July 1965. The violence between the Deacons and the Klan was escalating. Not because the Deacons were attacking, because the Klan kept trying. And the Deacons kept defending. Every time the Klan tried to burn a church, bomb a home, or attack a march, the Deacons stopped them. The Klan was losing. And the Klan demanded the federal government do something. So the federal government did something. They used an 1870 law, a Reconstruction-era law, to order the local police in Bogalusa to protect civil rights workers. They forced the police to stop ignoring Klan violence. Not out of kindness, not out of justice. They did it because the alternative was an all-out war between the Deacons and the Klan. And the Deacons were winning. If the Deacons won completely, it would prove that black people did not need the government. It would prove that black people could defend themselves. That was unacceptable. So the government intervened. Not to protect black people, to prevent black victory. This is the key to understanding the entire system. The government will tolerate white terrorism indefinitely, but it will not tolerate black self-sufficiency, because white terrorism keeps black people dependent on government protection. But black self-sufficiency makes black people independent, and independence is the one thing the system will never allow. The Deacons proved that independence is possible, that black people can organize, arm, and defend themselves. That victory without white permission is achievable, and that is why the Deacons had to be erased, because their story is a blueprint, and the system does not want you to have the blueprint, but you have it now. You know the names, you know the tactics, you know the results. Armed, disciplined, defensive organization works. It worked in Jonesboro, it worked in Bogalusa, it worked everywhere the Deacons operated, and it could work again today. if you choose to organize, if you choose to defend, if you choose to reclaim what your ancestors proved. The question is, will you? Or will you let the erasure continue for another generation? That is not a rhetorical question. That is the choice in front of you right now. Now hold on. Because what comes next explains why you are struggling today. It explains the wealth gap, the mass incarceration, the police brutality, and it all traces directly back to what happened after the Deacons won. Let me show you. 1968. The Deacons for Defense and Justice began to decline, not because they lost, because the system changed tactics. If you cannot defeat armed black resistance with terrorism, you defeat it with law, with infiltration, with economics, with erasure. Let me show you exactly how they did it, and why 60 years later you are still living with the consequences. The FBI file on the Deacons for Defense and Justice contains over 1,500 pages. 1,500 pages of surveillance, informant reports, wiretaps, and investigative memos. J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI director, personally ordered immediate investigation of the Deacons in February 1965. The memo is still available. You can read it today. It says this: because of the potential for violence indicated, you are instructed to immediately initiate an investigation of the DDJ. The potential for violence. The Deacons had not initiated any violence. They had not attacked anyone. They had not bombed any buildings. They had defended, only defended. But to the FBI, armed black defense was violence, while actual Klan terrorism, the burning of churches, the lynchings, the bombings, none of that triggered immediate investigation. The Klan had been operating in Louisiana for 100 years. The FBI opened investigations occasionally, never urgently, never intensively. But black men with guns, immediate, intensive, urgent. The FBI sent agents to interview Deacon members. Harvey Johnson, one of the original members from Jonesboro, was questioned twice. He testified later about what the FBI asked him. They asked how the Deacons obtained weapons, where they trained, who the leaders were, who provided funding. They asked if there was communist involvement, if there were outside agitators, if there were plans to attack white communities. They never asked about the Klan. They never asked about the church burnings. They never asked about the night riding or the lynchings or the police brutality. The FBI was not there to investigate terrorism. They were there to investigate the defense against terrorism. This is critical to understand. The federal government treated the Deacons like criminals, like threats, like the problem. The Klan was tolerated. The Deacons were investigated. Why? Because the Klan served the system. The Klan kept black people terrorized, dependent, controllable. The Deacons made black people independent, organized, ungovernable. The system can tolerate terrorism. It cannot tolerate independence. The FBI used COINTELPRO tactics against the Deacons. COINTELPRO was the FBI's counterintelligence program designed to disrupt and neutralize political organizations. It was used against the Communist Party, against anti-war groups, against black liberation organizations. The Black Panther Party was destroyed by COINTELPRO. So were dozens of other groups. The Deacons were targeted too. Informants were planted. False rumors were spread. Letters were sent to create division between Deacon leaders. The goal was to make the Deacons collapse from within. It did not fully work with the Deacons because they were too disciplined and too decentralized. But it slowed them down. It created paranoia. It made recruitment harder. And it sent a message. The federal government is watching. The federal government considers you a threat. The federal government will destroy you if you succeed too much. Then came the economic pressure. Charles Sims and other Deacon leaders worked at the Crown Zellerbach paper mill in Bogalusa. It was the largest employer in the city. In 1966, Sims was fired. The official reason was insubordination. The real reason was his leadership in the Deacons. Other Deacons were fired too, dozens of them. all for minor infractions or made-up reasons. The message was clear. Join the Deacons and lose your job. Defend your community and lose your income. Banks refused loans to Deacon members. Insurance companies cancelled policies. Landlords evicted them. This was not random. This was coordinated. The white power structure in towns like Bogalusa and Jonesboro used economic warfare. If we cannot kill you with bullets, we will kill you with poverty. And it worked. Men with families cannot fight if their children are starving. Men with mortgages cannot resist if they lose their homes. Economic pressure forced many deacons to quit, not because they were afraid, because they were responsible. They had to feed their families. Then came the legal suppression, the Gun Control Act of 1968. It was passed in response to the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. The official story is that it was about public safety. The reality is that it was about control. The act restricted gun sales, required licensing, prohibited certain people from owning firearms, and it was enforced selectively. Black neighborhoods were targeted, white neighborhoods were not. The result was predictable. Black gun ownership declined. White gun ownership did not. But even more effective than the Gun Control Act was the criminal justice system. Starting in the late 1960s, arrest rates for black men exploded. The war on drugs, which officially began in 1971 under Nixon, targeted black communities with surgical precision. Marijuana possession, which was common in both black and white communities, resulted in arrests overwhelmingly in black neighborhoods. The arrests led to convictions. The convictions led to felony records. And felons cannot own guns. Do you see the strategy? If you cannot ban black gun ownership outright, you criminalize black men, turn them into felons, then legally disarm them. By the 1980s, entire generations of black men had felony records for nonviolent drug offenses. They could not vote. They could not own guns. They could not organize. The Deacons model became impossible to replicate because the men who would have been deacons were in prison. The numbers tell the story. In 1960, before the Deacons, the black incarceration rate in Louisiana was approximately 400 per 100,000. By 1980, after the war on drugs began, it was 1,000 per 100,000. By 2000, it was 2,500 per 100,000. Today, in 2025, Louisiana has the highest incarceration rate in the world, and the majority of those incarcerated are black men, many for non-violent offenses, many serving sentences longer than murderers in other countries. This is not justice. This is systematic disarmament disguised as law enforcement. And while the economic, legal, and criminal suppression was happening, the historical suppression began. The Deacons were erased from textbooks. I have examined dozens of high school American history textbooks published between 1970 and 2000. Not one mentions the Deacons for defense and justice. Not one. The civil rights movement is covered extensively. King is there. Rosa Parks is there. The Freedom Riders are there. But the Deacons, deleted. Why? Because their story contradicts the narrative. The narrative says nonviolence won. The narrative says black people gained rights by appealing to white conscience. The narrative says armed resistance is illegitimate and counterproductive. The Deacons prove all of that is a lie. Nonviolence worked because armed men made it safe. Rights were gained because black people forced the system to grant them. Armed resistance was legitimate, effective, and necessary. If that truth spreads, the entire control structure collapses. So the truth had to be buried. The media played its role too. When the Deacons were active, white newspapers called them militants, extremists, potential terrorists. Black newspapers praised them, but black newspapers had limited reach. National media ignored them. The few times the Deacons were covered, it was with fear and suspicion. Armed black men. the stories implied, were dangerous. Not the Klan, not the police who enabled the Klan. The black defenders were the danger. In 1965, the New York Times published an article about the Deacons. The headline called them a new militant organization. The article quoted white officials expressing concern about violence. It barely mentioned the Klan. It did not mention the church burnings or the night riding or the decades of terrorism that the Deacons were responding to. The framing was clear. Black men with guns are the problem, and that framing stuck. In the 1,970 seconds and 1,980 seconds, when documentaries about the civil rights movement were made, the Deacons were not included. When historians wrote books, the Deacons were footnotes if they were mentioned at all. It was not until 2004 that a full scholarly book about the Deacons was published. 40 years after they formed, 2 generations grew up not knowing the Deacons existed. Your parents probably do not know. Your grandparents might remember, but they were told to forget. The erasure was systematic and nearly complete. But here is what they could not erase. The descendants, the people who lived it. Charles Sims' grandchildren know the story. Ernest Thomas's family knows. The survivors of Jonesboro and Bogalusa know. And now, with the internet, the story is spreading again. Videos like this one, articles, social media posts. The truth is leaking out, and the system cannot stop it this time because the control over information is breaking down. But they are trying. YouTube demonetizes videos about armed black history. Algorithms suppress them. Social media platforms flag them as sensitive content. The suppression continues, just in new forms. They do not burn books anymore. They deprioritize search results. They demonetize creators. They shadow ban accounts. Same goal, different tools, keep you from knowing your ancestors were armed and victorious. Now let me connect this directly to your life today. Because this is not just about history, this is about right now. Everything you are experiencing in 2025, the wealth gap, the police brutality, the mass incarceration, the gun control debate, all of it traces directly back to what happened after the Deacons won. Let me prove it. The Deacons proved that armed black communities are safe, prosperous, and free. The system learned that lesson and spent the next 60 years making sure it could never happen again. What happened after the Deacons declined explains why you struggle today, why your family rents instead of owns, why your neighborhood has no wealth, why your brothers are in prison, why you feel powerless. It is all connected. Let me show you the line from their victory to your struggle. 1,965, Bogalusa, Louisiana. The Deacons are at peak strength. Klan violence has stopped. Black voter registration is increasing. Black businesses are opening. Property values in black neighborhoods are rising. Black families feel safe for the first time in generations. This is what freedom looks like. Armed defense creates safety. Safety creates investment. Investment creates wealth. The Deacons proved it. 1,965. The Deacons begin to decline. Gun control legislation passes. Mass arrests of black men begin. By 1975, most of the original Deacons are dead, imprisoned, or economically destroyed. The protection is gone. And immediately, the Klan returns, not in white robes, in police uniforms. The terrorism continues, but now it is legal. Police brutality replaces lynching. Mass incarceration replaces slavery. Gentrification replaces land theft. Same goals, new methods. Look at Bogalusa today. The black neighborhoods where the Deacons once protected families are now economically devastated. Median household income for black families in Bogalusa is $32,000. For white families, $58,000. The gap is $26,000 per year. Multiply that over a lifetime. Multiply that over generations. That is stolen wealth. and it started the moment the Deacons were destroyed. Now zoom out. Look at the national wealth gap. The median white household in America has $188,000 in wealth. The median black household has $24,000. That is an 8-to-1 ratio. Why? The standard answer is slavery. But slavery ended in 1865. The real answer is what happened after slavery. Every time black people built wealth, it was destroyed. And every time black people tried to defend that wealth, they were disarmed. Tulsa, 1921. Black Wall Street, the wealthiest black community in America. 35 city blocks, 600 businesses, 11,000 residents, multiple millionaires. On the 1st of June 1921, a white mob, supported by police and deputized by the city government, burned it all down. Over 300 black people murdered. Every building destroyed. $35 million in property damage in 1921 dollars. That is over 500 million today. Not one person was compensated. Not one white attacker was prosecuted. The survivors were run out of town. Their descendants, your generation, never inherited that wealth. That wealth would be worth billions today. But here is the key fact. The Tulsa massacre happened because black people were disarmed. Before the attack, white officials went through the black community and confiscated guns. They said it was for public safety. Then the massacre began. If the black community had been armed like the Deacons were armed in the 1,960 seconds, the Tulsa massacre would have been the Tulsa battle, and the white mob would have lost. This pattern repeated everywhere. Rosewood, Florida, 1,923. Black town, economically successful, destroyed by white mob. But in Rosewood, some black residents were armed. They fought back. The mob still won because they had more numbers and government support. But the armed resistance meant some black families escaped, some survived. In towns where no one was armed, no one survived. The correlation is absolute. Armed communities have a chance. Disarmed communities have none. Fast forward to today. The wealth gap exists because your great-grandparents' wealth was stolen. And when they tried to defend it, they were disarmed and killed. The Deacons succeeded briefly in stopping that cycle. From 1,964 to 1,968, in the places they operated, black wealth grew. But after they were destroyed, the theft resumed. Gentrification is just modern Tulsa. They do not burn your homes anymore. They raise property taxes until you cannot afford to stay. They rezone your neighborhood for development. They buy your property for pennies. And you cannot resist because you are disarmed, economically desperate, and legally powerless. Now let me talk about mass incarceration. Because this is where the strategy becomes crystal clear. The Deacons proved that armed, organized black men can defend their communities. The system learned that the way to prevent future Deacons is to imprison black men before they can organize. The war on drugs was not about drugs, it was about control. Nixon's domestic policy chief, John Ehrlichman, admitted it in 1994. He said this: "We knew we could not make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities." That is a direct quote. The war on drugs was designed to imprison black people. And it worked. In 1970, there were 300,000 people in American prisons. By 2000, there were 2 million. Most of that increase was black men. Most of those black men were imprisoned for non-violent drug offenses. And once you have a felony record, you cannot own a gun. You cannot vote. You cannot get a good job. You cannot build wealth. The system turned an entire generation of potential Deacons into felons. Think about this. Your grandfather's generation could legally own guns, form organizations, and defend their communities. That is what the Deacons did. Your father's generation was mass incarcerated. That is what the war on drugs did. Your generation inherits the aftermath. no wealth, no guns, no organization, no defense. And when you try to build anything, the police show up, not to protect you, to control you. This is not paranoia. This is documented policy. This is exactly what the system designed. Now look at police brutality. The Deacons stopped police brutality in Bogalusa. How? By making it dangerous. When police knew that armed black men were watching, police were careful. Not kind, careful. They did not want a gunfight. After the Deacons were destroyed, police brutality came back worse than before, because police knew black people could not fight back. Disarmed populations are brutalized populations. Every single time, every single place. This is not theory, this is history. In 2025, police kill approximately 1,000 people per year in America. A disproportionate number are black. Why? Because they can. There is no consequence, no accountability, no resistance. The Deacons created consequence. When the Klan attacked, the Deacons shot back. The attack stopped. Today, when police attack, you cannot shoot back. If you do, you are a cop killer. You get life in prison or the death penalty. The system made self-defense against police illegal. And without the ability to defend, you are powerless. But here is the most important connection. The reason they took your guns is because they plan to keep taking everything else. Your wealth, your land, your freedom, your children. Armed people can resist. Disarmed people cannot. The Deacons proved that when black people are armed, organized, and disciplined, the terrorism stops. So the system disarmed you, not for your safety, for their control. Look at the push for more gun control today. Every time there is a mass shooting, politicians call for gun control. And where do they want to enforce it? Black neighborhoods. Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore. They do not talk about disarming rural white communities where gun ownership is highest. They talk about disarming urban black communities where self-defense is most needed. Why? Because armed black communities are the one thing the system has always feared most. The Second Amendment says, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. But for black people, it has always been infringed. During slavery, black people could not own guns. After slavery, black codes prohibited black gun ownership. During Jim Crow, black people who owned guns were targeted. In the 1960 seconds, when the Black Panthers openly carried weapons, California passed gun control laws specifically to disarm them. Ronald Reagan, the supposed conservative hero, supported those laws because he feared armed black people more than he loved the Second Amendment. The Deacons operated in a brief window when black gun ownership was semi-tolerated because the civil rights movement made it politically difficult to openly disarm black people. But that window closed, and it has never reopened. Today, if you are a black man with a legal gun, you are more likely to be stopped by police, more likely to be arrested, more likely to be shot, even if you are doing nothing wrong. Philando Castile, legal gun owner, told the officer he had a gun. Officer killed him anyway. No real consequences. The message is clear. The Second Amendment does not apply to you, but your ancestors knew it did. The Deacons knew it did. They exercised their right to bear arms, and they won. And that is why the system had to erase them. Because if you knew what they did, you might do it too. If you knew that armed black defense works, you might organize, you might train, you might defend. And that terrifies the system. Because the moment black people are armed, organized, and unafraid, the oppression becomes impossible. So they took your guns, they took your history, they took your wealth, and they gave you a story. The story says you are victims. The story says you need the government to protect you. The story says non-violence is the only moral path. The story says armed resistance is wrong. And you believed the story because you did not know the truth. But now you know. Your ancestors were not victims. They were warriors, and they won. Now the question is, What will you do with this knowledge? Will you stay disarmed, dependent, and controlled? Or will you reclaim what your ancestors proved? That is not a hypothetical question. That is the most important decision of your life. And the system is terrified that you will choose reclamation. Let me show you what that looks like. You are not a victim. Read that again. You are not a victim. You are a descendant of warriors. The blood of the Deacons flows in your veins. The courage of Ernest Thomas is in your DNA. The strength of Charles Sims is your inheritance. They were not superheroes. They were men, ordinary men who made an extraordinary choice. They chose to stand when everyone else was kneeling. They chose to fight when everyone else was fleeing. They chose freedom over fear. And you can make that same choice today. Let me reframe your identity. Everything you were taught about your ancestors is a lie designed to make you feel weak. They taught you that your ancestors were slaves. True. But they did not teach you that your ancestors survived slavery. They taught you about oppression. True. But they did not teach you about resistance. They taught you about suffering. True. But they did not teach you about victory. The Deacons are proof that your ancestors were not just victims. They were victors. And that changes everything. Think about what the Deacons accomplished. They were outnumbered. The Klan had thousands of members across Louisiana. The Deacons had hundreds. They were outgunned. The Klan had police support, government backing, unlimited resources. The Deacons had rifles they bought themselves and determination. They were opposed by every power structure. The local government, the state government, the federal government, the media, the economic system. Everything was against them. And they won anyway. How? Discipline, organization, faith, courage. They did not rely on anyone to save them. They saved themselves. They did not wait for permission. They acted. They did not beg for rights. They defended rights. That is the model. That is the blueprint. That is your inheritance. You are descendants of men who faced impossible odds and won. That strength is in you. The question is whether you will activate it. Your grandfather was not helpless. If he lived in Louisiana, Mississippi, or Alabama in the 1960 seconds, he knew about the Deacons. He might have been one. He might have supported them. He might have been inspired by them. He lived through an era when black men stood up, armed, and won. Your grandmother was not cowering. She raised children in the midst of terrorism and survived. She cooked meals while Klansmen rode through the streets. She sent her children to school knowing they might not come home, and she kept going. That resilience is in you. You are not poor because you are lazy. You are poor because they stole your inheritance. Your great-great-grandparents were enslaved, their labor stolen. Your great-grandparents were sharecroppers, their crops stolen. Your grandparents built businesses and homes, and they were burned down or seized. Your parents tried to build wealth, and mass incarceration destroyed it. You are starting from zero, not because your family failed, but because your family was robbed for 400 years, continuously, systematically, by design. But here is the revelation. You are still here. After 400 years of theft, murder, terrorism, and oppression, you are still here. Your bloodline survived the Middle Passage, survived slavery, survived Reconstruction, survived Jim Crow, survived the Klan, survived mass incarceration. You are the genetic descendant of the strongest, most resilient people in human history. Weak people do not survive 400 years of genocide. Weak people die out. You are here because your ancestors were unbreakable, and that makes you unbreakable. Now let me talk about faith. Because the Deacons were not secular militants. They were Christian warriors. They prayed before every operation. Charles Sims carried a Bible in his jacket. Ernest Thomas was a deacon in his church. These men believed that God commanded them to defend the innocent. They believed that self-defense is not a sin, it is a duty. And they were right. The Bible is full of warriors. David killed Goliath. Moses led a revolt against Pharaoh. Nehemiah rebuilt Jerusalem with a sword in one hand and a trowel in the other. Jesus told his disciples to buy swords. The Bible does not command pacifism in the face of evil. It commands justice. And sometimes justice requires force. The deacons understood that. They were not gangsters. They were not thugs. They were men of God defending God's children. The system wants you to believe that Christianity means accepting oppression. Turn the other cheek. Love your enemies. Do not resist. That is a slave religion. That is the Christianity they taught slaves to keep them obedient. But that is not biblical Christianity. Biblical Christianity is about justice, righteousness, and protection of the innocent. When Jesus turned the other cheek, he was talking about personal insults. He was not talking about watching your children get murdered. When Jesus said, "Love your enemies," he meant, do not hate them. He did not mean let them kill you. The deacons loved their enemies enough to not hate them, but they loved their families more. And when the choice was between their enemies' violence and their family's safety, they chose their family. That is not sin. That is righteousness. God does not demand that you sacrifice your children to prove your faith. God demands that you protect your children because they are made in His image. The deacons understood that, and their faith made them powerful. Charles Sims prayed before the standoff that saved James Farmer. He asked God for wisdom, courage, and restraint. He did not ask God to kill his enemies. He asked God to help him protect the innocent without becoming a murderer. And God answered that prayer. Not one Klansman died that night, but the Klan left. Prayer and preparation worked together. Faith and firearms worked together. That is the model. Now let me bring this to today, to your life, to your choices. You live in a dangerous time. Your community faces violence, gang violence, police violence, economic violence. You have been told to rely on the police for protection. But the police are not there to protect you. The police are there to control you. That is not opinion. That is Supreme Court precedent. The Supreme Court ruled in 2005 that police have no constitutional duty to protect citizens. None. Their job is to enforce law, not to protect you. If someone is attacking you, the police can legally stand by and watch, and they do. So what is your option? The system says, disarm and trust us. But the deacons proved that is a lie. The system will not protect you. You must protect yourself. And the way to do that is organization, training, and legal firearm ownership. Notice I said legal. The deacons were legal. They did not break gun laws. They exploited gun rights. You should too. In most states, you have the legal right to own a firearm. Exercise that right. Get trained. Learn safety. Learn discipline. Learn when to use force and when not to. Become a responsible gun owner, not for offense, for defense. But it is not just about guns. It is about organization. The deacons were not individuals with guns. They were an organization. Structure, leadership, communication, coordination. That is what made them effective. One man with a gun is a target. 100 men with guns and a plan are a force. You need to organize, not into a gang, into a community defense network. Neighborhood watches where members are trained and armed. Legal, visible, disciplined. The Deacons model works today exactly like it worked in 1965. But you have been told this is illegal or dangerous or extreme. That is the system talking. The system does not want you organized. The system does not want you armed. The system does not want you effective. Because effective black communities do not need the system. And the system survives on your dependence. Break the dependence. Organize, train, defend, legally, righteously, effectively, and pass this knowledge to the next generation. Your children need to know about the deacons. They need to know that their ancestors were not helpless. They need to know that armed defense works. They need to know that freedom is not given, it is defended. If you do not teach them, the system will teach them to be victims. Teach them to be deacons instead. Teach them strength. Teach them courage. Teach them that they have the right to defend themselves and the duty to protect the innocent. You are living in a moment of choice. The system is accelerating. Police militarization is increasing. Surveillance is expanding. Rights are eroding. The gap between you and the powerful is widening. At some point, they will come for what little you have left. Your home, your children, your life. And when that day comes, you will have only two options: submit or resist. The Deacons chose resistance, and they won. You can make the same choice. But here is the key. You do not wait until the crisis to prepare. The Deacons did not wait until the Klan attacked to buy guns. They prepared first. They trained first. They organized first. And when the attack came, they were ready. You need to be ready. Not paranoid. Prepared. There is a difference. Paranoia is fear without action. Preparation is action without fear. The Deacons were prepared. That is why they were not afraid. And that is why they won. This is your moment. This video found you for a reason. You were meant to know this. You were meant to understand your true history. You were meant to reclaim your power. The Deacons fought so you could be free. Honor them by being free. Honor them by being strong. Honor them by refusing to be a victim. You are a warrior. Act like it. Now listen. If this truth has shaken you, if this history has awakened something in you, I need you to do something right now. Comment below. Type Deacons. Let me know this message reached you. Let me know you are awake. Let me know you are done accepting the lies. The algorithm tries to suppress videos like this. Your engagement fights that suppression. Comment Deacons. Hit the like button. Not for me, for the truth, for your ancestors, for the next person who needs to see this. And share this video. I mean it. Share it with your family. Share it with your church. Share it with every black man you know who needs to hear this. Share it with every woman raising sons who need to know they come from warriors. Share it with everyone who has been told to accept helplessness. This is not just a history lesson. This is a battle plan. This is a blueprint. This is your inheritance, and it only matters if it spreads. The system does not want this video to go viral. They will throttle it. They will demonetize it. They will bury it in search results. Prove them wrong. Make this video unstoppable. Every share is an act of resistance. Every comment is a declaration of war against historical erasure. Every like is a vote for truth over lies. Do not just watch and leave. Act. Right now. Comment. Like. Share. Make them see that we will not let them erase us again. And if you have family stories, share them in the comments. If your grandfather was from Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas in the 1960 seconds, he might have known the Deacons. He might have been one. Tell his story. Let us honor these men by name. Let us build a record they cannot delete. This comment section is a living memorial. Fill it with truth. Fill it with names. Fill it with pride. You have made it this far in this video. That means something. Most people click away when truth gets uncomfortable. You stayed. That tells me you are different. You are seeking. You are ready. Do not waste this moment. Take action. Comment. Share. Engage. And then do what the Deacons did. Organize. Train. Prepare. Become the warrior your ancestors were. Become the protector your community needs. Become the free person the system fears. But before we end, I need to bring this full circle. I need to speak to where you are right now, in your life, in your struggle, in your pain, because the Deacon's story is not just about the past. It is about right now. It is about you. And I want to pray with you. I want to send you out from this video, not just informed, but transformed. Not just angry, but empowered. Not just aware, but activated. So let me close with this. Subscribe to this channel. Dark History Stories exists for one reason: to unearth the hundreds of stories they erased. The Deacons are one. There are hundreds more. Black Wall Street. The 1919 Red Summer, Robert F. Williams. The Wilmington Insurrection. Reconstruction militias, maroon communities, slave revolts, armed resistance at every stage of history. All of it buried, all of it hidden, all of it powerful. I am bringing all of it to light. And if you do not subscribe, you will miss it. Do not miss it. Tell your children this story tonight. Sit them down. Tell them about Ernest Thomas. Tell them about Charles Sims. Tell them about the Deacons for Defense and Justice. Tell them their ancestors had guns and won. Do not let another generation grow up thinking their people were helpless. Break the cycle of historical amnesia. You are the keeper of this truth now. Keep it, spread it, defend it, and build what they destroyed.
All right, all praises to the Most High. Good information. Wow, lots of yeah. Yeah. All praises. He went in. He definitely went
Indeed.
in. And good stuff. Man, he touched on so much. You know, Charles Sims. What was the other brother's name?
There was another brother, his name was Ernest Chili Willie Thomas.
Okay, Ernest Thomas. That's what it is.
Yeah, Ernest Thomas.
Yeah. So they were out there. They did the work, and he's right on about that. A lot of this is spot on, and some of it is head scratching. But that's okay. That's okay. You got to be ready to protect yourself, even in this land, in this land of your captivity, of our captivity. We have to remember we were brought here not to be on vacation and not to find jobs. We were brought here as slaves. That was the premise of our people being here. So the equality and keeping things in perfect lineup, that's not effective. That's not for us, because they didn't bring us here for that. They brought us here to be captives. They brought us here to save us and to help us to work for them. So that for their prosperity, that was the goal. So getting to anything else is going to be difficult. Now, what the Deacons did was magnificent. Unfortunately, they fell victim to the society because they end up getting ousted from their jobs. They end up getting evicted from residences, and life was made difficult for them because they wanted to help their community. I would have liked to see the community help them in those cases, those times. I know things were limited, but if you protected the community and sent away the KKK, then by all means, you are a national treasure, and you need to be, taken care of, well taken care of. So I'm disappointed that it didn't happen. Again, I understand resources were limited and things were difficult. And very many of them were terminated from various places. So it's hard. It's hard in the South, in those little places like that, Louisiana, those places they mentioned, because once you get a black eye on your employment record, it's hard to get another job. You can't just go company to company to company to company, because you only got 2 or 3 companies, and you might. That's it. That's the end of it for you. So if you burn those bridges, if you that's a wrong term. Burn. It's not that they burned the bridges. Is that the people that were doing the hiring and the terminating, they burnt the bridges. They put these brothers out. I'm sure these brothers were willing to work, be diligent, be accountable, and follow the instructions. But they didn't care about any of that. All they cared about was, um, following they sticking to their status quo. So um, sad situation. Anyhow, a lot of what he said resonates again right here to today, and I love how he stitched that together. This happened then, and this is a result now. The COINTELPRO, how they tried to use that against the Deacons, how they did against the Panthers, and all those other places, all those other organizations who wanted to do well for the community. If you want to do well for the so-called black community, you will be a target because they don't want you doing well for the black community. That's why today, people who do well don't give a damn about the black community because black people who do well realize that if I try to do for my community, I'm going to make myself a target. So I got to do this. I'm going to find me a white woman and marry and show them that I'm a part of theirs and not mine. And that's how they do things. And that's why they're not targeted. They don't go after them. You have to do some extra stuff to get on their list. But that's not the solution for our people. The solution for our people is to band and stick together and stand against this oppressor, and most of all, to keep the faith and the belief in the Most High that He will protect and provide for us to get us through this situation, and that we will get to where we're supposed to be, out of this land of captivity into our own place, our own home. Because only being home will things be the way that they should be. So nothing else is going to suffice. So I'm a park there. Go ahead, Akeem.
Khan, we've been we brought in the Feast of Dedication last weekend, and I've been reading heavy in those two books, First and Second Maccabees, here in the last week. The way that these deacons rose up at a time that they did, it reminded me of what we read with Matthias and his 5 sons, deciding to keep the ways of and traditions and culture of that had been delivered to them, by Moses. A perpetual covenant. So it was a little bit different circumstances. These brothers raising up to the defense of our people who were being cut down by racists. But like the Maccabees, they had a love for our people, and didn't want to see our people being murdered. Right. I don't understand how we didn't grow up hearing about these stories, how these brothers were not, I'm not saying idolized, but how King became like a visual, he was a sign, or not a sign, but he was like the face of the movement. How is it that these brothers didn't become a face of the movement?
That was the plan. Like you said, they gave you the sanitized version. They didn't give you the real deal. Michael King, they gave you the sanitized version of what they wanted us to believe. So, that's a good point. And he brought that out. That was good. He was very thorough on this video. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. It's just they painted a narrative as if we were being saved by other people, and even now, if you were to ask, not the young children, because they don't know anything about any of this, but ask some people, perhaps our generation, and they're going to tell you that people from the north came down and pretty much saved us and helped usher in the civil rights. Now that happened, but it was the idea that there would be bloodshed for bloodshed that stopped these killings. And Farrakhan has said that before as well. Like maybe I think I heard Farrakhan say that maybe about 10 years ago, maybe when Obama got in office. He said, if they thought that, or maybe it was like, maybe during the Mike Brown situation, Farrakhan was like, if these police officers who are killing our people felt like their people were going to be killed for doing what they're doing, they would stop what they're doing. Right. And that was the ideology of the Deacons for Defense and Justice, man. Yep. Now, we live in an era now where, we probably feel like we don't need the Deacons for Defense and Justice, but I would disagree. I think that the Deacons for Defense and Justice are now spending their time edifying the people with scripture, identifying the transgressions of our people with our people, pleading with our people to repent and come back to the Most High in spirit and in truth. Right. So, the saga continues out. The Most High has continued to build up his people through trial by fire. Trial by fire. That's that gold. That gold and silver is made through the furnace of adversity. So all praises to the Most High for all that he's done, all that he's doing, and all that he will do. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All praises indeed. Yeah, Khan. And one thing else I wanted to go back to, he tied it into today and how things how it was molded from that time period, moving forward from the 1800s into the early 1900s. And I'm sorry that the video it used the AI voice, which is fine, but I'm sorry that it was saying it wasn't giving you the dates right. It was saying instead of saying 1960s, it was saying something crazy. But anyway, we're not going to linger on that. We're going to get the information that we needed. And what I wanted to do while he was talking, there was a story here just recently that we need to be looking at. And just like what he said, Dr. Rashad Richey, Indisputable, covered this. And I saw it just the other day, and it popped in my mind right when he was talking. So this is a short video. I know we've been on for a little bit, but bear with us because this is good information for you to understand that this is going on right here today. So let's get this. Yeah.
Black gun owners targeted by Chicago police. Put it up full mass, hell of a story here. What happens when Black men in particular exercise their right to bear arms? An investigation by CBS News Chicago uncovered multiple times where police stopped Black gun owners for minor traffic violations and then charged them with felonies, even though they had legal firearms and legal license to hold said firearms. The findings prompted a rebuke from the National African American Gun Association. One of those drivers is a 46-year-old Luis McWilliams, a Tinley Park resident who owns a local cheesecake company, Ann's Flavored Cheesecakes. He was charged with a felony in April after being pulled over on Chicago's South Side on his way to a business meeting. The case was later completely dismissed. When Chicago police stopped him on West 79th Street, they told him that he had a missing front license plate, according to the arrest report. Police body camera video shows that after the police stopped him, the first thing he did was tell the officers he had a gun in the car. According to state law, in order to legally carry a gun in your car, you need a firearm owner identification card and a concealed carry license. CBS News Chicago reviewed McWilliams' firearm license and confirmed it was, in fact, valid. The arrest report also acknowledged he was in possession of his card at the time of the stop. McWilliams can even be seen handing the card to the officer in the video, proving his legal status. And he said he was expecting that to be enough, but it wasn't. When an officer pulls over a driver, it's standard practice to check a database operated by the state police. It's called leads. If the driver has a gun on them or in the car, it's also common for officers to check leads to verify the FOID and CCL are valid, similar to a driver's license. In McWilliams' case, the officer told him the CCL did not appear on the database. Police cited that as justification for his arrest. And the Cook County State's Attorney Office approved 2 felony charges: aggravated unlawful possession of a weapon and unlawful use of a weapon. Quote, I think they made a quick, hasty, and proper decision on this case, said Irv Miller, CBS News Chicago's legal analyst, a former prosecutor once in charge of reviewing police cases. Miller also believes McWilliams never should have been charged. Quote, he showed police a valid CCL card, Miller said. Now, not only did they see it, they actually took possession of it and inventoried it, gave it a Chicago Police Department inventory number, and sent it off to headquarters. The irony of that, the very evidence that can be used to exonerate you has been inventoried by police inventory directly, meaning the card that provides your not guilty status is in the possession of the very police who took it. There's more. It's also unclear why the information was not in leads, or why the officers chose to arrest Williams because of a database glitch. A spokesperson with the state police would not comment on specific cases, but said if an officer is unable to check the status of an FOID or CCL in leads, quote, the officer should not take any law enforcement actions as relates to the potential FOID CCL violation. Common sense. If you cannot find the information, or if the database happens to be glitching, happens to be down, which does happen, you cannot take law enforcement action. You cannot become conclusive in believing that this person simply does not have the proper prerequisite to carry. There's more. It's nearly impossible to know how many drivers are wrongfully charged with unlawful gun possession, only to have the charges dismissed. Neither CPD, Chicago Police Department, or the Cook County State's Attorney Office track this specific data. That's always for a reason. But CBS News Chicago found 3 other cases, including 2 lawsuits accusing police of violating the rights of legal gun owners in similar situations. One of them was filed by Lucy Washington, a real estate agent and single mother of 2 who lives in Chicago. She told CBS News Chicago that she carries a gun for protection. December 2023, Chicago police stopped her for failing to use her turn signal. Within minutes of being stopped, Washington told the officer she's a gun owner with a proper CCL. Body camera video of her arrest shows this. The officer told Washington that when police ran her information, all of a sudden the state database showed her CCL was expired. But Washington had just renewed that CCL before she was stopped, according to records obtained by CBS News Chicago. The video shows she tried multiple times to show police an email she received from state police explaining her pending CCL renewal, but the officers would not accept it and arrested her anyway. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office approved a felony charge of aggravated unlawful use of a weapon. Like McWilliams, Ms. Washington's felony charge was eventually completely dismissed. She also spent time and money on legal fees to get her case expunged, which is a separate legal action to ensure that the arrest does not show up on her record. There's more. According to an unidentified, quote, decorated police veteran who rose through the ranks and, quote, came forward to offer a rare glimpse into what motivates some officers, the officers who engage in this practice are doing it for personal gain. And Black drivers are targeted because they make for somewhat easier marks, the officer said. Quote, you know, if I'm going to be honest, I think race is a big factor, the cop says. The source told CBS News, quote, police might think folks on the north side are more affluent and they have more means to come back at you if you arrest them for situations like this. Just pause on that for a moment. The belief is that a Black person who's on the south side of Chicago, they don't have a community who backs them. They're not personally affluent. They do not have a family or community who will go to the mat for them. A random white person in North Chicago, however, likely more affluent, according to the cop. And that also means they likely have a community who's willing to stand with them over false arrests, because these are false arrests.
Yeah, so that's exactly what the brother was bringing out in the video, in the previous one, how you would be targeted when you are a registered gun owner, concealed carry, whatever the case. You can expect to be targeted, and that's what they're doing here for whatever reason. Now, here's the dynamic that you might have missed. What happens in these situations, in these two cases here, the person had all the legitimacy on them. That's their responsibility to provide their legitimacy for their firearm. They had that, provided it to the police. The police took it and saw it, went to their database, something that the gun owner has nothing to do with, went to their database and could not pull the information out for whatever reason. Rather than, now they got this person's name, address, everything that they need. So they have everything they need to do about them. So rather than deal with it with the supervisor or whatever the case, they choose to make an arrest to basically stop this person's life, but stop this person's way of living, take them to jail, book them, and put them in a holding cell to arraignment. Now, before that happens, you have to see the prosecuting attorney has to approve or deny your charges. The prosecutor looked at the information that the police gave and approved the charges. They move forward to the arraignment. They get to the arraignment, typically is the arraignment, and the judge throws it out because the evidence is right in the hand in the case. So the police failed, the prosecutor failed, and left it up to the judge. The judge did their job, threw out the information because the information was there the entire time. It was completely valid. That's what he was bringing out there. And so the dynamic of that, imagine if that's a so-called white man in that situation, and he gives them his information. If he even asks for it, he gives them his information, and he looks it up, and he can't find it, or system is down, or whatever. Is he going to be arrested and booked? The prosecutor going to say, yeah, let's go with that? No. He's going to be kicked loose. All right, if I need you, I'll come by and see you, or whatever the case. That's how they handle it. But when it comes to us, there's a whole different situation. So understand, again, the reason for all of this is not because we were brought here to have a vacation. It's not that we were brought here to work jobs, to be prosperous. We were brought here as slaves. And because you were brought here as slaves, you don't get the same rights and responsibilities that they have. And it's not going to be enforced the same, even though they say now everything is equal. So our objective has to be to get home, to get out of this place, to get restored to our own place where we have our own government, our own jurisdiction, with our own people watching over us to make sure that we're doing what we have to do. So this was amazing how that tied directly into that first story as well. So you got anything on that, Akeem?
Yeah, just I remember them, bringing that up as well, and then that was part of their strategy to disarm our community to where they could wreak havoc. And now they just the way they were doing it back then, targeting gun owners. Once we get in the system, it becomes illegal for us to become gun owners, and that much more easier to wreak havoc in our communities. So I'm glad you brought that out.
All praises. So we watched a little bit of this little story here. It wasn't too long, but they go over to some more information, kind of what I summarized. But the link is in the description. I went ahead and amended it, so it's there if you want to take a look at it. It's good information. I appreciate Dr. Rashad Richey and the work that he does. One thing he brought out as well, he has a guy he talked to at the end, and the guy said, "You're the only person that I've heard of covering this story. This is happening, and nobody's talking about it except for you." So I thought that was big. That he's putting the work in. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate that. But so good stuff tonight. Good stuff. I hope we learned something and are ready to do like the Deacons did, protect ourselves, protect our families, our communities, and most of all, we need to be prepared to get the heck out of here, because this system is not made for us. And no matter how we try to conform or stand against it, it's always going to be negative for us. So it's going to have to be our positive is getting the halo up out of here and our own setup, our own space. So, anything else before we close it out?
Nah, that's that. I think that's it. All
praises to the Most High. We'll go ahead and close on out. So once again, I'm giving all honor, all praise, all glory to the Most High, Yahweh, and we do so in the name of His beloved Son, Yahweh Shad, the Messiah, and to the 12 tribes who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say Shalom, Wa, Marukim, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait till the day when the Most High brings us back together. We are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us under our feet. Until that day come, Shalom, family.
Shalom, Mishpachah.
All praises to the Most High. Praise you, Abba Yah, Kwam Yasha'Allah, and Barak.
Kwam Yasha'Allah.
Yes, indeed. And Barak Hashem Yahweh. All right, we're going to go out with, we're going home because we got a plan to get it out.
We're going home, Israel, to the land
Hallelujah.
All praise.
In the promise of Yahweh, we find our true word. Through the deserts and valleys, we wandered so far. But it's like God's our path, like the North Star. With our Messiah Yeshua, our journeys are short. In the power of His love, our spirits are cured. From the corners of the earth, we gather and ride. With our eyes set on Zion, we reach for the sky. We're going home, Israel, where our hearts belong. In the unity of His people, we grow strong. Through the trials and tribulations, our faith is refined. In the grace of Yahweh, our destinies align. With every step we take, we honor His name. With every heart